And we're back with the fourth episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, Vox in Excelso. An episode that centers on the Klingon character J-Den, the most non-Klingon character in the history of Klingons. The episode opens with Captain Shoeless giving a captain's log or chancellor's address, and then the Doctor is giving a lecture on debate. And he quotes that famous Aaron Satie speech from the Next Generation's episode, The Drumhead. As you recall, Picard quoted that when he was on the stand. Picard said, "With the first link the chain is forged, the first speech censured, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably." That's the quote. But the Doctor actually gets it wrong. That's how bad the writing is on this show. He says, "With the first link the chain is forged, the first speech censured, the first thought forbidden, us all irrevocably." What? How did they butcher that quote so badly? He's missing some of the most important parts of the quote in there, to the point where the end sentence makes no sense. He says, "us all irrevocably." But he missed the bit before that. "The first freedom denied chains us all irrevocably." The chains us part, right? That's very important as well. "Us all irrevocably" on its own doesn't make any sense as a sentence. Like, how did the writers make that mistake? Seriously, did someone highlight a piece of text in a word processor and then accidentally hit backspace or something? Well, in my view, if you needed any more evidence that the people in charge of this show and writing for this show don't really know Star Trek that well, there you go. Oh man. Anyway, so the Doctor swears as well, because Star Trek definitely needs more swearing. Yeah, very important. Anyway, Caleb is, for some reason, a skilled debater. Despite having no real formal experience in debate, no formal training in debate, no academic training in debate, because apparently you can just learn to become good at debate in prison or something. Yeah, sure, that's totally believable. He also has an encyclopedic knowledge of Federation law, star dates, and history. Why would he get all of that in prison? J-Den says, "Arguing, standing for what I believe, makes sweat flood down my face." Wow. Does anyone else remember when Klingons were Klingons? Ah, the infinitely better old days. J-Den won't even eat pepperoni on a pizza because he won't eat anything that didn't die in a fair fight. Which again is the writers overthinking Klingon behavior, especially when you consider Gok. Yes, serpent worms that Klingons eat alive. Also, Kronos and Kales are mispronounced several times in this episode. There's an additional accent placed on both words for some reason. What else would you expect? There's a Klingon refugee crisis apparently, and a ship has crashed that is believed to have had J-Den's family on board. Anyway, the Federation wants to give the Klingons a new world to live on, but the Klingons don't want to take it out of pride. The episode focuses on a debate about whether the Klingons should accept assistance from the Federation or not. Where do you think this episode is going to go? How do you think this is going to get resolved? Not predictable at all. Why wouldn't the Klingons accept a new world that the Federation don't even want? Why not just take it, or take it and say that you conquered it? The Klingons can be prideful, but they're not a hive mind who all think alike, and they're also not stupid. So the episode kind of creates a straw man argument where the Klingons take this position that is very simplified. The Klingons won't accept the world that they're offered because they're close-minded and stuck in tradition, and the Federation has this sense of smug, self-righteous superiority. By the end, the Klingons have to accept this new world anyway, because Klingon traditions are seen as backward and have to be kind of pandered to. But honestly, if this was classic Trek, I don't think the Klingons would look a gift horse in the mouth. They wouldn't refuse the planet in the first place. I think in a survival situation, They tossed tradition out the window anyway. Remember, in Star Trek VI, the Federation were considering giving them a safe haven in Federation space. Many were against it, on both sides, yes, but the offer was still strongly considered. So we get some flashbacks to Jaden and his family, and how his father wanted him to be a warrior. His brother, who dies, tells him that he's good enough the way he is, as a healer, as a man of science. And I think this episode was a little better than the last one, which isn't saying much. One positive I will say is at least the episode was more serious than some of the previous ones. The closest to Jaden as a character that we ever got on Star Trek was probably Alexander Roshenko, Worf's son, who was inadequate as a warrior, and frequently he embarrassed his father. But he had grown up around humans, of course. He hadn't gone through the rites of passage that a Klingon would go through at a young age. His combat training had been neglected. But in the end, he recognized his inadequacy, and the crew of the Klingon ship he served aboard eventually grew to quite like him, mainly because, although they understood he wasn't warrior material and could be incompetent, he at least tried. And his effort was recognized and respected. He tried to be a proper Klingon, even if he didn't measure up. Jaden, on the other hand, doesn't even want to be a proper Klingon for no real reason. Alexander had a reason. He'd been very humanized in his early life, but Jaden came from an actual proper Klingon family. So there's no real reason or motivational backstory for why he is so wayward. In the end, he delivers a long-winded rah-rah speech about the Federation and what they should and shouldn't do, and he suggests a Klingon solution to a Klingon problem. The Federation and Klingons agree to a mock battle in orbit of the planet so as to preserve Klingon dignity. The Klingons claim the planet as spoils of war. Jaden and Caleb reconcile their differences, and the episode ends. This episode was another snooze fest, and it's certainly not going to be enough to turn the show around at this point. As I watched it, I couldn't help but think, imagine we could actually be getting Star Trek Legacy right now instead of this. I mean, this is just abysmal television. We are 4 episodes in. None of the characters are really standing out for me, and I don't find any of them likable. That's kind of a major problem. This one was a painfully predictable character story, made all the worse by the fact that at least 15 minutes of the episode could have been shaved off the runtime, and nothing would have been lost. Certainly nothing important. But those are my thoughts on this latest episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates. Please share the video out there. Take care, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye-bye.